الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. When we talk about the tabi'un, those great salihin, pious people that came after the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, we discuss some that are giants like Sa'id ibn Musayyib, and when you look at people that are unmatched in their virtue, right? Then you look at Uwais al-Qarni that we did, and amazing, somebody that the glad tidings given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in order to do the next one, I started to think, who should I talk about? And I found one very interesting. His father is from the 10 that were given the glad tidings of Jannah. And his grandfather is from the 10 that were given the glad tidings of Jannah. And his mother and many others are amazing characters in Islam, people whose virtue and status is amazing. And he himself was such that, subhanAllah, there is an incident that we'll talk about that is unimaginable, his patience and his dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mentioned in the kutub across the board. If you look at al-Dhahabi, and Ibn Sa'ad has a very detailed and well-documented explanation about this in his Tabaqat. So I decided to speak about him, and I wanted to mention a quote from Sufyan ibn Uwayna, who said, عند ذكر الصالحين تنزل الرحمة. He said, when you sit and remember the Salihin, the people, the Salaf al-Salihin, the Sahaba and those Tabi'un and those great A'imma and Ulama, and learn about them, then the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends. So, this is why it's important for us to learn about them. There is a book by Ibn Abi Dunya, it's called Al-Mard wal-Kafarat, the sicknesses and how they take care of their sins and how it affects and so on. And he mentions about a man. This is the one we're going to be studying about. He said a man from the Tabi'een, he was called by Walid, who was the Khalifa at that time. So when he wanted to travel, to go and give that nasiha and visit the Khalifa, his eldest son named Muhammad, who was a very handsome man, and a very eloquent and a very religious and good son, went with him. When Walid saw them, see now again, when we talk about the Khulafa and the kings or the leaders and the leaders of Muslims of the past, they were amazing people themselves, even though people criticize them for whatever mistakes and things, even though everybody has mistakes. But they were people of knowledge. A lot of them, we'll talk about Abdul Malik ibn Marwan today a little bit as well. And a lot of them were tullab ilm and narrators of hadith and memorizers of Quran, and they would make ikram for the ulama. Everybody has mistakes. I'm not saying they were perfect. They weren't sahaba, they weren't anbiya. But Walid, he respected the people of knowledge. So when he came, this man that we're going to talk about, even though, and I don't want to get off topic, the man we're discussing, his elder brother, had a big problem with Umayyah. So politically, it's not like they were trying to make political goals, but they still respected the knowledge. So Walid saw his son and saw him dressed well, and he said, this is how the youth of Quraysh should dress. This is how we should dress. He should be well dressed. And he praised his handsomeness. I don't know whether he got ayn or not, but any which way, when they were looking at the horses of the Khalifa had really great, Walid had really amazing horses. And at that time, horses were a big thing of respect. They were used in war. They were an instrument to defend the Muslim lands and to spread the message of Islam. And like today, somebody might like cars, somebody might like different things, At that time, horses were something amazing. Camels and horses, these were things that were practical, and they were a thing of honor. So as they were looking, one of the horses, either, as some of the ulama of Tariq said, became loose and stomped on his son, or he fell, but either way, his son died. Right there, his son died. This is something, may Allah protect us all. They said the heaviest burden is the janazah of the son on the shoulder of the father. The heaviest burden is taking the janazah of the son on the shoulder of the father. May Allah protect our brothers and sisters in Gaza. When you see all these pictures and videos of these children that they're burying, Allah, it's a very difficult thing they're going through. We just see pictures, but the emotions and it's insane. May Allah protect them and free them. So this is first by itself a very heavy thing. But on top of that, his own leg got gangrene. Gangrene. So, very interesting. Many of you may have heard this, but there's a lot of detail that you may not know. At that time, Walid, as the Khalifa, he became very upset. He wanted to help this great scholar and person. So he called the best physicians and doctors. Muslims had really good doctors to come and be at his service. The doctors told him, we have to cut your leg. If we don't cut your leg, it'll spread and you'll have a bigger problem in your whole body. It's the only solution, we got to cut your leg off. He said, okay. So doctors told him, we're going to saw your leg. I mean, this is, again, this is why it's very important to understand context, right? It's not like when you get your leg amputated here. You go to a hospital, they put you to sleep, laughing gas, anesthesia, you're out, you wake up, your leg's gone. Which is still a hardship. I mean, I'm not saying it's ever easy to lose a leg. Right? But here, they're going to lay you down, they're going to get a saw and cut off your leg. Right? So they told him, there is an intoxicant, and they gave him fatwa, and obviously he was a person of knowledge himself, that the pain is way too much to bear. So take this intoxicant, so it'll blur your mind, you'll be whatever drunk, and then we'll cut your leg. He said, A'udhu Billah, I'm looking for khair from Allah, and how can I go for khair through haram? They told him, this is darura, there is fatwa, you know this hadith, and this scholar. He said, I have never stepped in that haram, and I never will. Inshallah. So they told him, okay, we have this other medicine, it's not intoxicant, it's not going to make you drunk, it's not khamar, but it just blurs your mind. Like all it's going to do is it's going to kind of numb your mind, so you'll be kind of like you're not going to be drunk, but you're going to be kind of out of it, and we'll cut your leg. I mean, it's not going to be, it's still going to be painful, but it's still a little better. He said, I don't want my leg to be cut in a time where my mind is not remembering Allah. I don't want to go through this hardship and my connection with Allah is disconnected. And subhanallah, like I said, for us, we can't reach these. Today if you're having a baby, you're like, epidural away. If you're getting a tooth taken out, you're like, put me under. So I mean, it's not like we may not be able to reach the level of the Salihin, but first we should know about them, what is authentic, to appreciate what they have done for the ummah. Who are they? So when you hear a qawl of them, you understand where that's coming from. You don't want to be like, for example, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Sa'id ibn Jubair said, and then somebody's like, well, my Maulana said, and you're like, oh, same thing. No, not the same thing, right? So these are the tabi'un that were raised in the household of Sahaba. They were raised, some of them, in the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Hassan al-Basri will talk about later. No, it's not Hassan al-Basri today. So some of the books, they exaggerate that he started to make salah and they cut his leg during salah, but this is wrong. And then I've read this and I heard lectures on this, but this is wrong. The ulama of tariq have checked these narrations with chains. Today the problem is, people just exaggerate to make something sound good. They get up to give a talk, and then anything that can motivate the crowd, they'll say it. They don't care if it's true or not, authentic or not. We're not like that here. So this story that he stood up to, he said, let me make salah, and during salah they cut off his leg, that is incorrect. And as one of the ulama that was criticizing the people for quoting such things said, the cutting off the leg would have made him fall in salah. And the blood that would come out, the gushing amount of blood that comes out from amputating your leg, you can't, this is something that, yes, some of the Sahaba had arrows removed and so on, but not a whole leg being amputated. That is not an authentic story. What is authentic is that he made salah and he said, I'm going to be remembering Allah without any anesthesia, without any medication, without any numbing, cut my leg. And he laid down. And this, like I mentioned, Ibn Sa'ad and Al-Dhahabi and Ibn Kathir and others across the board have this narration. It's authentic, no doubt. Al-Zuhri, which was one of his students, Shihab al-Zuhri, he said he laid down and they started to cut his leg and they brought a saw to go through the bone, and we only heard from him silently, not even screaming, silently making the dhikr of Allah with La ilaha illallah, alhamdulillah. We didn't even hear him cry or let out a shout. SubhanAllah. These are human beings. Imagine today you lay down and somebody's cutting off your leg. But this was their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was their dhikr. Not like the bid'ah, people do backflips and dancing and they're like, this is dhikr, and they're doing break dancing and stuff nowadays. No, their adhkar was silent, it was humble, it was between them and Allah. But the connection there was so strong that you could cut off a leg and they wouldn't cry. And they wouldn't move. The doctors had told them that we're not going to do this because from the pain you're going to move around so much, we're not going to be able to do it. They said he didn't even move a limb. Walid, the Khalifa, he was shocked. So his leg was amputated, and subhanallah, his practice in his life, since he was from a young man, since he was from the shabab, from the youth, was that he would read 1/4 of the Quran every day. And he would read, which is 7.5 juz, he would read it from the Mus'haf first in the day, and then recite it the same 7.5 juz at night from his memory. That was his regular practice. The only day he missed it was that day. Otherwise, since he was a youth till he died, this was his regular practice. When his leg was amputated, he had it brought to him. So bring me my leg. And then he looked at his cut off leg and spoke to it. And he said to his leg, he said, by the one, and he's swearing by Allah, that allowed you to carry me to the masajid in the darknesses. He swore by Allah, but in a beautiful way. He said, by the one who allowed you, my leg, to carry me to the masajid in the darknesses. I have never stepped on you to go to haram. Imagine, I mean today, haram is not just drinking and zina and things, going to gatherings and backbiting and spreading rumors, and these are all things that are major sins. Ghiba, backbiting is one thing. What is backbiting? Let's say, Allah protect you all, I'm just going to use an example, right? I don't want to use anybody here. Brother Muhammad, just a regular name, not any of you here. Brother Fulan, let's say I know that he drinks alcohol, right? And I go and tell people, he drinks alcohol. This is backbiting. I mean, unless somebody's asking to marry from his daughter or something, or yes, that fault is in him. But going around and telling people, what's the point? Right? Let's say a brother, may Allah protect us all, he's disfigured. He walks funny. And you tell somebody, you know that brother, which one? The one that walks like this. That's backbiting. You're like, no brother, but it's true. I know it's true, but that's backbiting. It's namima, which is also a major sin. This is when you go and spread news about people. Even when it may not be under the category of backbiting, but you go and spread it. Oh, you heard this? You heard that? Without verification, without knowing for sure. Today is a big fitna in our ummah today. Everybody sees a video and you don't know anything. It could be whatever. Spread it. Oh, did you? Yes. You know what? This is namima, major sin. And then there is buhtan, which is even worse than both of these. When you accuse somebody when it's not true. You may think it's true, but if you haven't verified and you make buhtan, this is major. In fact, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would consider this, somebody who did this, to be a munafiq. This would be alamat al-nifaq, if somebody made buhtan. And that's why in the Sharia, when there's ifk, when you make an accusation against somebody and you don't have actual witnesses, you're whipped 80 lashes. Think about that, 80 lashes. So, in that time, the Salihin were such that he spoke to his leg. And he told his leg, he said, I swear by the one that allowed you to carry me to the masajid in the darknesses of the night, I have never walked on you to any haram. This is something that, he was not upset with the leg being cut. He was happy that there would be no accountability for that leg, because he had never used it for haram and it was cut off now. Now, Walid is very interesting. A blind man comes to the Khalifa at the time and tells him, I've lost everything. He tells him what happened. This man said that I used to be the richest of my qawm, of my people. And this is, again, authentic narration. He said, I was from the richest of my people. Nobody had more than me in wealth and children. Multiple wives, tons of sons, daughters, wealth, camel, sheep, dirham, dinar. I had the most in my whole qabila, my whole tribe. Says, I moved to a certain place, brought all my wealth and children there, and a flood came and it hit our area so bad that it took everything, my children, my wives, my wealth, everything was destroyed in the flood except one camel and one infant child. Everything was gone. Subhanallah. He said, I had the child and the camel ran away. I was protecting my child, the camel ran away. So I went to look for my camel, I found him, I put the infant down to go get the camel, and when I turned, I saw wolves attacking my child, my infant child. Wolves were ripping him apart. He says, when I turned to him, the camel kicked me, made me blind. The camel ran away, the child passed away, and he was blind. Walid, he had a softness in his heart. He said, I will give you, from the wealth of Baytul Mal, I'm going to make sure you're okay. But do me a favor, go and tell this story to Urwa ibn Zubayr. And that's the person we're studying from today. Urwa ibn Zubayr. He said, go and tell your story to Urwa ibn Zubayr, so Urwa ibn Zubayr understands that no matter what hardship you're going through, somebody has it worse. Now Urwa he didn't need this. He was already from the people of patience. But I found this very interesting that the Khalifa Walid, who's sometimes criticized, especially by the Rawafidh and so on, and he had that softness that he at least wanted him to hear somebody else's story. He said, look, whatever hardship, even though it's unimaginable, your son just died, your leg just got cut off, somebody else has it worse, so be patient, Urwa, he went back to his people, and his people loved him. The people of Medina, and he's from the fuqaha of Medina. Urwa ibn Zubayr is the brother of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Abdullah ibn Zubayr is a Sahabi. In a time he ruled Hijaz and so on, and we studied about him in the Sirah Durus afterwards and so on. And the people loved him. So when he was going back, when he was entering his town, the people were crying because they heard his son died. And they loved his son. He was a pious young man. And they heard his leg was cut off. So Urwa told him, what's wrong with you? Allahumma laka alhamd. He said, I thank Allah. He says, look, Allah gave me 4 sons and He took one, but He left me with 3. Alhamdulillah. Allah gave me 4 limbs, He took one, but He left me with 3. What a generous Rabb I have. He said, Allah tested me here, but He has given me so much ease in so much of my life. I say, Alhamdulillah. SubhanAllah, that is a positive mindset. That is, that's a shakir, somebody who's shukur, thankful of Allah. He didn't think, why did my hand get cut off? Or my leg get cut off? Why did my son have to die? What did I do wrong? Why me? Why my life like this? Why my qadr like this? Why my nasib? Why this? No. He looked at the positive. It's like glass half full, half empty. And he, subhanallah, he said, if Allah took one of my limbs, so what? Allah left me 3, that is more. Alhamdulillah, that is, you know. And he said, the one who tested me is so generous that he only took what he gave me, and even then left me more than he took. You think about it, right? Like sometimes we're like, oh, what if your finger gets cut off? You're like, oh, my finger, oh, why did it happen? Who gave you that finger? Allah. Who gave you these limbs? Allah. So if Allah wrote for you to lose one, so what? Alhamdulillah. Who gave you all this wealth? Allah. So if Allah took some away from you, so what? Who gave it to you? Allah. If you are thankful, Allah will increase it. If you are patient, Allah will bless you for it. One of the great scholars and from the students who used to take hadith from Urwa is Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Talha. When he saw him, he told him, be patient. Know that your limb and your cut off leg and your son have preceded you to Jannah. So if you're patient and you stay upon what's haqq, upon the right, and you enter Jannah, inshaAllah, they will be there waiting for you. So don't think you've lost them if they've just gone ahead. And those are some wise, beautiful words for him. Imam Al-Hafidh Al-Dhahabi, when he begins the introduction about Urwa ibn Zubayr, he says, Ibn Hawari Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He is the son of the Hawari, the disciple, the supporter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's a beautiful title. What does that mean? Well, his father, Zubayr ibn Awwam, as I mentioned at the beginning of the dars, his father was from the people that were given the glad tidings, the 10 that were given the glad tidings of Jannah. Now, you know the 10, right? Inshallah. There are many other Sahaba that were given glad tidings of Jannah, even Uwais al-Qarni al-Tabi'i, we talked about him and so on. But these 10 are the greatest, or the most virtuous of all of them, as we know. From them, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Abdurrahman bin Auf and Awad bin Jarrah and Sa'd bin Waqqas and Sa'id ibn Zayd and Talha and Zubayr ibn Awwam. So Zubayr ibn Awwam is his father, but Zubayr ibn Awwam has a special title that, you know how the Hawariyun, they were the supporter, the disciples of Isa ibn Maryam. He's called the Hawari of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we spoke about him and why he had this title and so on in our Sirah Durus, so I'm not going to go over that again. But this is an amazing honor that he was the son of one of the glad 10 who were given the glad tidings of Jannah, who is Zubayr ibn Awwam. And his older brother also, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, is an amazing character in the history of Islam. But I mentioned that his grandfather is also from the people who were from the 10. Well, Awwam isn't. So who is it? I know you know. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. Why? Because who is his mother? Asma bint Abi Bakr. Subhanallah, look at the pedigree. His father is Zubayr ibn Awwam, the Hawari of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the 10 giving glad tidings. His mother is the one that had the 2 belts that put the food for Abu Bakr and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the hijrah. Asma bint Abi Bakr, I mean, she's such an amazing personality in Islam by herself. So it's amazing father, amazing mother. Zubayr ibn Awwam radiyallahu anhu was a very strong man as well. He used to, in battles and things, he was amazing. Now, Zubayr ibn Awwam is the son of Safiya, the aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he's also the cousin. So Urwa is also in that way related to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib. But when you look at all of this, none of that in the end matters if the person themselves is not pious. Meaning, if you look at the relations that Abu Lahab had, being the neighbor of Rasulullah, being the actual uncle, and so on. But what matters in the end is the Iman. And this is where Urwa ibn Zubayr excels. He used to serve his aunt Aisha radiyallahu anha. He took a lot of hadith from Aisha bint Abi Bakr. And Aisha radiyallahu anha, of course, her virtues we've already discussed and so on, and the knowledge. So he used to go and serve her. He used to serve his own mother, but he used to go serve his aunt. As like a servant, he would get things and put things. Why? Just to take the knowledge from her. He would go, and because he was mahram to her, he would go and take the hadith from her and take the knowledge from her. And as she said herself, and he has some narrations about this as well, she said, if I was to die, I would not worry about knowledge being lost, because Urwa has memorized everything that I learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes I mention his aqwal in tafsir and fiqh, and people are like, who's Urwa? But you should know who these people are. He was from the fuqaha sab'a of Medina, and from the teachers of Imam Malik, and from the 7 famous fuqaha that were in Medina, and we've spoken about them under Sa'id ibn Musayyib as well. But in addition to that, when Umar ibn Abdul Aziz came to visit Medina, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the Khalifa, the pious man, he came to visit Medina. He told them, bring me the scholars of Medina. Of course the 7, but some of the ulama said 3 more went with them, 10. But who was made the head of them to speak to Umar Abdul Aziz? Urwa ibn Zubayr. He was made the head of the delegation of the top ulama of Medina to speak to Umar Abdul Aziz. And Umar Abdul Aziz told him that, look, you are the people of knowledge. If I do anything wrong, correct me. If my appointees do any dhulm, come and tell me. And this, and he asked for advice. And beautiful. We had more time, we'd love to get into just the beautiful words of Umar Abdul Aziz and what he said to the ulama and how the ulama responded. And this shows a khair of those intelligent and good leaders, that they go to the people of knowledge, to the people of piety, and ask them for advice, knowing that they are the ones that are going to protect you from the hellfire, not just who can get you more political power and wealth and money and so on. He was from the people who laid the foundation of the madhab of the people of hadith, which later became as Ahlul Hadith. The people that were dedicated to studying and memorizing and acting upon hadith and so on, that Imam Malik and Al-Zuhri and others they talked about. But he was from the people that laid that foundation. Imam Al-Zuhri, the teacher of Malik, was the student of Urwa ibn Zubayr. And he used to teach hadith in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took a hadith directly from Sahaba. You will not find him quoting from Tabi'un a hadith. You will find him directly taking from Sahaba, because his father is a Sahabi, his mother is a Sahabi, his aunt is Aisha radiyallahu anha, obviously Sahabiya. And he was around the Sahaba, and he was early on. Tabi'un, you have the very early ones, the senior Tabi'un, this is from them. Then you have the middle, who may have met some of the Sahaba, but they didn't really take knowledge with them every day like him. And then there is the smaller or the lower tabi'un, who maybe just saw a sahabi, but they didn't take direct hadith and so on. But he is from the one that his own aunt was Aisha, so day and night he was taking hadith from her. So he would quote from them, and from Ali ibn Abi Talib and Abdullah ibn Abbas and other sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And it's so many sahaba that he mentioned a hadith from, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu and others, that the list would be too long. At-Tabari, he says about Urwa ibn Zubayr that Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and Walid would go to him for the seerah, and especially in regards to a hadith that had to do with Maghazi and seerah. Maghazi is the battle, which is what the seerah books were called, that he was at the time the top authority. And some of the Sahaba were the best known for tafsir, like Abdullah ibn Abbas, even though he narrates hadith, and no doubt. Some for recitation, like Ubay ibn Ka'ab and others, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and others, like Abdullah ibn Umar for hadith and fiqh and so on. But especially when it has to do with the life of the Prophet ﷺ, Urwa ibn Zubayr is the top authority amongst the early tabi'un. And that's what the Malik ibn Marwan and Walid and others would go to him and tell him, teach us about the life of Rasulullah ﷺ. Most of the works that came, even Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham and others that came afterwards, they would rely heavily on his works. And unlike Al-Waqidi, who was matruk in hadith because Urwa ibn Zubayr was such a strong narrator, his narrations were accepted. From his students, and there are many, but from the best of them, and a well-known of them is Hisham, his son. And this is something very interesting. When Zubayr ibn Awwam stood for the haqq and so on, his son stood with him. Abdullah ibn Zubayr, when he made his stand, his brother, which is Urwa, stood with him and went with him. And when Urwa went to see Walid, his son, Muhammad went with him. His son Hisham used to be the first one to his durus and used to take that knowledge from him. And that's why he's from his closest students. Hisham ibn Urwa ibn Zubayr, who by the way on his own is a great scholar. You read his own biography, it's an amazing biography. And his aqwal, Hisham ibn Urwa, his aqwal are used in tafsir and in hadith and in fiqh by itself. But he was from his students. From his students is Jafar as-Sadiq. And this is very interesting because many of the Rawafid, the Shia and so on, they paint a picture of Jafar as-Sadiq that is not true. They ascribe things to him that are not true. There is no authentic change for him. By himself, Jafar as-Sadiq was a great scholar. And not that he was ma'soom, like he's not a prophet. Everybody makes mistakes. But he was a great scholar. And the Rawafid, when they want to play tricks, they say, oh, Abu Hanifa was a student of Jafar as-Sadiq and Imam Malik and Shafi and Ahmad, they came after, so our Imam was first. No, Jafar as-Sadiq is a student of Urwa. In the end, Urwa was from the people of Sunnah, as is Jafar as-Sadiq. But in the end, everybody has a teacher. It's just because your Imam may be earlier in a timeline doesn't mean that he's more knowledgeable, he's better than somebody else, because in the end, they took their knowledge from someone as well. In the end, there is nobody better than the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum after the Anbiya. And in the end, the hujjah is with the fi'l and the qawl and the qarar of Nabi alayhi salatu. The proof and the evidence is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ata ibn Abi Rabah was a student of his, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, very famous and a very close student of Urwa is al-Zuhri. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri is an amazing scholar. Inshallah, we will study him as well. And well known if you look in Jarh wa Ta'deel and an aqwal about tafsir and hadith and so on. But he was a student of Urwa. About his family, he had 4 wives, and some of the books mention a 5th, so it could be that if one was divorced or died or whatever he may have taken. But he himself mentioned that he had 4 wives at the same time. And he had, from Ghanaim, also other women that were brought in through wars and so on. And he had 18 children. 18 children. MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. From the unusual ones, or ones that worthy of mention, is that he was married to the daughter of Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu. So now, you put the puzzle together, subhanallah, right? His mother, Asma bint Abi Bakr. His grandfather, Abu Bakr. His father, Zubayr ibn Awwam. His brother, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. All amazing, right? And now his aunt, Aisha radiyallahu anha. Amazing. And he's so many amazing. But his wife is the daughter of Abdullah ibn Umar. So he's always he's sitting with his father-in-law and taking all those ahadith also from who? Abdullah ibn Umar. Some of the ulama said he specially married her so that he could have time with Abdullah ibn Umar and take a hadith from him. Now, as we mentioned, he also was in that way related to Umar ibn Khattab. Because Umar ibn Khattab is the father of Abdullah ibn Umar. You know, that's another one of the Khulafa and the 10 of Jannah. He also married a woman named Asma bint Salama ibn Umar ibn Abi Salama. And that is the granddaughter and the step granddaughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the granddaughter of Salama. So Salama, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married her granddaughter. So he also took a hadith that they had learned, that the granddaughter had learned from her mother, from her grandmother, who was the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now she is not from the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but when Rasulullah married Salama, the child that she already had, from her daughter, he married. So from the stepdaughter, we don't really have steps in Islam, but in that sense, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Sa'd in his Tabaqat, and in this biography, I relied heavily on that, and going back to Al-Dhahabi and stuff to look at Takhrij, he said about him that he was thiqa without a doubt. No shak, no doubt to him being a reliable narrator. And he was strong, and his specialty was in hadith, but he was a faqih and an all-round alim as well. He was a zahid, and he spoke about him and the Quran that he used to read and so on. And he said no one understood hadith, especially regarding the seerah, better than him. Ibn Sa'd said that in regards to maghazi, which is what they called seerah at the time, there was nobody better than him. And he said that he used to recite the Quran rub'a, 1/4, because even though he sometimes wanted to recite the whole Quran in a day, but remembering the hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't recite the Quran in less than 3 days, he said remembering that, he would control himself to just recite rub'a. So in 4 days, he would finish the Quran. Today we have somebody who comes to the masjid and we're going to finish the Quran in 3 nights and 1 night and 2 nights and 1 tarawih. We're going to, nobody understands it. The ahkam are all destroyed. They make a show out of it. The YouTube clips of these guys. What is this? Rasulullah forbid this. Some of the Salaf al-Salihin, when it's mentioned that they recite the Quran in less than 3 days, it's times when they were so in love with the Quran and they recited it so well and they were so dedicated they couldn't stop and so on. But from the Sunnah, that 7 days is what you should regularly do. I mean, again, if you can, right? But no less than 3 days. So he would stick to that because he would stick to the hadith. A man, from his beautiful benefit from his life, he saw a man quick in his salah. You know, like sometimes when they make sujood, they're quick. Our time, they make it so quick that the salah is not accepted. And if you're sujood and you're sitting between the two sujood is not at least calm enough for your body to be in its place, then your salah is not accepted. But in that time, it wasn't that bad. But he saw a man still kind of fast in his salah. So he came to the man after salah. He told him, you don't have any needs from the Rabbul Alameen, from Ar-Razaq, from Allah? The man said, what do you mean? He said, the salah is the means to get from Allah. And if you're speeding through your salah, I guess you don't need anything. You don't make dua for anything. You don't ask Allah. You don't need Allah to guide you or to benefit you or protect. The man said, no, I'm in need of Allah for everything. He said, then why would you do that to your salah? He said, for me, even milh, even salt. If I want salt, my salah is the means to get from Allah. He used to have wealth, by the way. Urwa was a zahid, but he was wealthy. I mean, this is the thing that we don't understand today. If you see somebody, Allah gives them some wealth, you think, oh, this person, the person of dunya. Not necessarily. You see somebody broke, you think he's zahid. Not necessarily. There's a lot of broke guys out there that are greedier and more focused towards money and wealth than the rich. Allah hasn't given it to them, but they still want it. And if they get it, you'll see what they do with it. Maybe Allah gave them afiyah by not giving it to them. And there are rich who are generous and they don't care about their wealth. And their wealth doesn't affect them like many of the Anbiya and so on. And this is from Urwa. He was wealthy. And he had a very beautiful garden. And his garden was famous. It was beautiful and he had a wall that was put around it because when the fruit is not ripe, the animals and things would go and destroy the crops. But when the fruit would become ripe, he would tell his servants to take down the walls, and he would allow people to come and take what they need. If anybody's hungry, just go and take the dates. Because the dunya didn't enter his heart, but the people at that time were such good people, they didn't abuse it either. Today, if somebody comes and says, look, whatever money I have, I'm going to put it outside, take whatever you need. Before we finish salah, somebody's going to break their salah, go and take that money and run with it. This is unfortunate, right? Today, people are too much me. This is the problem. But at that time, the regular people, even the needy people, they had some dignity, right? And he would enter the garden saying, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah, remembering the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about Sahib Jannatain and so on. And he was very precise about following the Quran, Hadith and everything. His death, ulama have said either 93, 94 or 95 Hijri, around that time. But very interestingly, when he died, he was fasting. And as he was fasting, his family and the doctors of the time, they told him, look, you're not doing well, you've got these health issues, you need to break your fast. I mean, it's a nafal fast, you can break it. He said, no, I don't want to break it because I want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state of fasting. And he told them that I will make my iftar from a sip of the water of Al-Kawthar from Al-Jannah that the Hur al-Ain, the women of Jannah, will bring for me, and I will drink from that, and that is going to be my iftar in Al-Jannah. And subhanallah, right before Maghrib, before iftar time, he passed away. From some of the beautiful statements that I hope that we benefit from regarding him and from him, Imam al-Zuhri said, the Khalifa Muawiyah, during the Khilafah of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, until it lasted, we used to gather and study myself, yani al-Zuhri, and he said Mus'ab and Urwa, the son of al-Zubayr, both of them, by the Mus'ab is also a son of Zubayr ibn Awwam, Abu Bakr ibn Abdul Rahman, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Now that's very interesting. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan later is yani, Khalifa, but he was a talib ilm. Like he used to sit in halaqat of hadith. He said Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Abdul Rahman ibn Misar, Ibrahim ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, who was the son of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, and Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah. And we used to separate in the morning. So we would go and we would sit in the masjid and we would take hadith, and in the morning came, sometimes meaning all night. And the morning came, we would separate, we would go on our own way. But Urwa beat us, he exceeded us. Why? Because then he would go and study the ahadith from Aisha bint Abi Bakr. So because he was mahram to her, she was his aunt, so he would take the regular ahadith that we used to take in the masjid, but then he exceeded us. Why? Because when we went home, he went to the house of his aunt and continued to gain more knowledge. Hisham, his son, he said from his father, this is a beautiful statement that Hisham ibn Urwa is saying that my father would say. So it's his father's statement. He said, what's wrong with you youth, the one who are young? He said, what, you are young now, why don't you dedicate yourself to studying knowledge? To talabat ilm. Because if you're young now, you'll be old tomorrow. You'll be sheikh tomorrow, like sheikh in the age sense. Huh? So what's wrong with you? Why are you wasting your time? You're young now, but don't think youth will last. You use this time. And if you're old, then it doesn't befit a sheikh to be ignorant. He said, if you're old, it doesn't befit an old man to be ignorant. So if you're old, still go and seek knowledge, because how can you be old and still not have learned? So whether you're young or old, you should seek knowledge. Indeed, he said, Hisham, I saw my father for four years before the death of Aisha bint Abi Bakr, that he would sit and take a hadith from her as much as he could. So at her deathbed, she said, there is no hadith that reached me from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any of the Sahaba except that Urwa memorized it from him. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the Khalifa, he said, I cannot find anybody more knowledgeable than Urwa ibn Zubayr, and I don't know of him having any knowledge that I'm unaware of. Meaning Umar Abdul Aziz used to go and sit with him so much that whatever knowledge Urwa would have, Umar Abdul Aziz would also memorize. And this is why did I bring this, especially to understand how knowledge has been preserved. In books, Imam Malik in his Muwatta and Zuhri in his writings and before and so on, In fact, Urwa, and this is something a lot of people don't know, he actually wrote manuscripts of Seerah. It is the earliest written manuscripts. So now imagine when, Kuffar and the Quraniyun, which are just people who want to follow their nafs, they don't want to follow the Quran. They say hadith weren't written, where did you get all this? This is all unreliable. Urwa actually wrote down a hadith. And especially, in fact, as At-Tabari says, that he wrote an entire work on the Seerah. It's called Maghazi, on the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this is why the Sahaba are still alive. This is not 200 years later and 300. No, he was taking it directly from his father and his mother and his aunt Aisha and writing it. At-Tabari says, when I was writing my Tariq, I looked at his handwritten manuscripts. Tariq At-Tabari, which we have today. He said, I saw his handwritten manuscripts on the Seerah, the life of Rasulullah, which is hadith, and I wrote in my book from them. So even if those manuscripts that Urwa himself wrote, Wallahu alam if we have it today. I've never found them. But what was contained in them, as seen from the writing, At-Tabari did record and preserve. Hisham said, by Allah, we did not learn even one portion of what my father used to have. And this is from the humbleness of Hisham. He was a great student, but he had that love for his father to take and respect that he had for him. Az-Zuhri said, I asked Su'ayr about an issue of fiqh. He said, you should stick to the statement of Sa'id ibn Musayyib because he is so knowledgeable. He said, I stuck with his statement for 7 years, and then I went to an alim, which Urwa ibn Zubayr. When I sat with him, I found the depths of the ocean of knowledge. And I took the knowledge from him then. Which means that he, of course, the teacher that he had, the madhab that he had was Sa'id ibn Musayyib. But when he went to Urwa and he saw Urwa present the evidences, there were more, he said, that I took from them. Ibn Abu Zinad, he said about Abdurrahman ibn Humayd, narrated to us, saying, I entered the masjid with my father and I saw the people gathered on one man. So my father said to me, look at him, and I asked him, who is he? He said, this is Urwa ibn Zubayr. Then, as I was surprised, my father said, oh my young son, don't be surprised. Indeed, I saw the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asking Urwa, and then after burning some of the books of fiqh, that were burned, he said, I would trade those books and my family and my money just for the knowledge of Urwa. Let me explain that statement. So Urwa, when he was sitting, this is at a time Sahaba are still alive. And when he saw so many people gathered around him, Masjid al-Nabawi, the young son, he became surprised. So his father told him, don't be surprised. Know this, that Urwa has so much knowledge that I've even seen Sahaba come and ask him for fatwa. And later on, when the fitna began, some of the fiqh that was written down was burnt. So his father was telling him that I would give up my own family and all my wealth just for those works, but I'm not worried because Urwa is still alive. He has preserved that knowledge. The last thing I will mention is before his death, he moved to a place, and it's a fortress, you can still see it. It's a castle called Aqib. And historically it's still there. And he moved there. And he used to be away from the people. He used to still teach, he had his students, he had his people, and he moved. And the people started mocking him. The people started slandering him. And this is subhanAllah, even though he's such a knowledgeable one from the Salihin, but who can be saved from the tongues of the people, right? And they said, look, he left the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ for this castle. So he responded to him, he says, now that you made the masjid into a place of entertainment, I could not bear to see that. And it's towards the end of his life. Meaning, at that time, because the fitna was growing, and you know what happened with the wars and Hajjaj and all the stuff, and people started to narrate things that were not authentic and people were not allowed to question and so on. He said, when you made this, I decided to go to just be with the people that are going to take that authentic knowledge and preserve it. And this is why I have secluded myself, and this is where he died. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and reward him and allow us to follow in their footsteps.